David. Baby. Honey, I need y'all to strap in because what just came out of that Los Angeles courtroom is the kind of thing that makes your whole stomach flip. If you are one of those people still acting like this case is quietly going away, oh no, sweetie. This case is just getting warmed up. Because while you were sleeping and TikTok was busy arguing about the next movie beef, D4vd, yes, that 21-year-old singer whose song, Here With Me, was on every teen playlist 12 months ago, has now spent 3 consecutive days sitting in a downtown LA courtroom in that bright orange jumpsuit, shackled at the feet, in front of his alleged victim's parents. While one piece of evidence after another has come out that, if a jury believes it, will hand the prosecution the kind of case that ends with a man never tasting the outside of a prison again. And that is straight from the testimony of LAPD criminalists, the deputy medical examiner, and the deputy DA herself, as reported by NBC LA's Julia Deng, who has been planted in that courtroom every single day sending back notes detailed enough to make a paralegal jealous. NBC Los Angeles. Now, real quick, before we get into the meat of it, let me give you the refresh because not everybody is going to remember how we got here. Back on September 8 of 2025, a Tesla registered to D4vd, real name David Anthony Burke, was towed into the Hollywood tow yard. The car had been sitting long enough that it started to smell. When the lot workers opened up the front trunk, the smell got significantly worse. And inside that front trunk, wrapped in black trash bags inside cadaver bags, were the dismembered remains of a teenage girl. Dental records identified her. The braces were still on. She weighed approximately 71 pounds when the deputy medical examiner placed her on the scale. Her name was Celeste Rivas Hernandez. She was 14 years old. She was from Lake Elsinore. She had been missing since 2024. And prosecutors allege, across a multi-day preliminary hearing now underway, she was in an illegal sexual relationship with D4vd at the time of her death. Killing of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, Wikipedia, Fox LA. Anyhow, let's start at the very top of the morning because reporters like NBC LA's Julia Deng and News Nation's Brian Enton all tell me the energy in that gallery turned upside down inside of the first 10 minutes. Court started. The shackles came off the wrists. That was a defense request from yesterday that the judge granted, but they kept the ankle cuffs and the waist chain on David Anthony Burke. So picture it, slight, freshly grown-out afro, black glasses, unshaven, head bowed while the deputy DA Beth Silverman stood up to call the first witness of day 3. In the gallery, Celeste's mother Mercedes sat directly across the aisle. Celeste's father sat beside her. They have been sitting through every day of testimony for the past week, including day 2 when the prosecution put up graphic photos of their daughter's decomposing remains. According to courtroom sketch artist Mona Edwards, and I want y'all to sit with this detail for a second, David Anthony Burke sat through those photos with his arms folded across his chest, staring straight ahead, yellow legal notepad open, blank, untouched. Not a single visible emotional reaction. The sketch artist described it to Julia Deng in the lunch break as him being on another plane. Other people in that courtroom told reporters the word they keep coming back to is sociopathic. I am going to tell you what they said and let you decide what it means. ABC 7, Law and Crime / Sidebar with Jesse Weber, Day 2 transcript. Now here's where the room got loud. Beth Silverman started laying out the financial case, because special circumstance murder for financial gain is one of the 3 special circumstances that make David Anthony Burke eligible for the death penalty under California law. The DA's office has not yet said publicly whether they are going to actually pursue death, but a whole day of the hearing has been about the money. Money in this case is, frankly, disgusting. $11.5 million record deal. Multiple managers taking percentage cuts. A Spotify artist whose streams were exploding at the exact time prosecutors allege a 14-year-old girl was being abused. The defense tried hard yesterday to chip away at that. They brought in their own theory, that nothing was going on between David Anthony Burke and Celeste, that the money is irrelevant, that any cash flow was just industry cash flow. But the prosecutor kept landing the same punch, more money on the table, more motive to keep the alleged secret buried. Baby, when a 14-year-old's body is inside the front trunk of your Tesla, that is not a secret that stays buried forever. KTLA, Digital Music News / WWLP. Okay, so the Tesla. Y'all, I have to walk y'all through what they actually found inside that car, because once you hear this, you are going to understand why reporters in that courtroom have used the word horrifying about a case they have personally been sitting through for 3 days. The Tesla got towed to the LAPD Tech Center at Piper Tech. A criminalist was called out. And here is the line item that had the gallery gasping on day 2. 11 air fresheners. Inside the car. 11. Not one tucked behind the visor. Not a couple of trees hanging from the mirror. 11. In the center console. In the back seats. Inside the front trunk, the very place where Celeste's remains were wrapped in trash bags inside cadaver bags. Why does that matter? When a body has been decomposing inside a vehicle for months, that smell becomes something no ordinary person could ignore long enough to walk away from. Whoever was managing that vehicle made the calculation that the smell would raise questions, so they purchased and installed a small pharmacy of car fresheners to mask it. That is not the act of someone who didn't know. That is the act of someone who knew exactly what they were sitting on. But it doesn't stop there. Same criminalist walked the prosecutor through the pictures. Testified about the Blue Star presumptive blood testing investigators had run on the inside of the Tesla. And yes, baby, there was Blue Star reaction on the seats. The floorboard. The headliner trim. In plain English, when they sprayed that chemical on the interior, it lit up where blood had been. Anywhere from a drop to a smear, Blue Star presumptive positive. Whoever cleaned this car did not get it perfectly clean. They got it almost perfectly clean. Almost perfectly is not perfect. And when Beth Silverman went through those photos with the witness, she pulled up each photo, had him point to each spot, and noted the location in the record. The defense will say this only proves blood was once in the car. They will not concede whose. And that is the dance that has been going on for 3 days inside that courtroom. NBC LA, Tesla/Hollywood Hills dig, BBC News. Y'all, hold on, because the next thing is worse. There is blood on the floor of the garage at the home where David Anthony Burke had been renting. In his garage. Beneath black rubber floor mats laid over brick flooring. The prosecutors are walking the judge through the picture. The blood, presumably from Celeste's body, was seeping out through the rubber mat, down through the brick. That is a positive presumptive test. That is forensic evidence in a courtroom. And when those photos hit the screen, baby, the courtroom reporter behind Julia Deng let out a visible gasp. Celeste's parents, who had been quietly sitting through the testimony up until that point, physically shrunk in their seats. Julia Deng described them moving closer to each other. Like two people trying to make one body out of grief. I need y'all to sit with that. So now we have the Tesla. The air fresheners. The presumptive blood. The blood in the garage. What else does the prosecution have? Inside a trash bag at the home where David had been staying, they found wipes, the kind you use when you have something on your hands. A toenail was recovered. And the medical examiner's office performed DNA testing that produced a DNA profile consistent with Celeste, and when I say consistent, I mean with numbers so astronomically outside the realm of coincidence that one criminalist in particular, Samantha Tosh from the LAPD crime lab, used the language statistical probability with 24 zeros behind the first digit. The probability of that DNA profile belonging to anyone other than Celeste is functionally zero. Blair Berk, his lead attorney, argued tertiary transfer. She literally stood up and did a hypothetical, shook an imaginary co-counsel's hand, touched an imaginary podium, watched as the imaginary judge put her imaginary notebook down on that same imaginary podium. She asked, is it theoretically possible that DNA from one person lands on another through a chain of contact? The criminalist answered, that is a possibility. So yes, the defense is planting doubt. But honey, you be the judge of the weight. ABC 7, DNA testing on evidence. Anyhow, what I need y'all to understand is the cover-up picture the prosecution is constructing, because that is where this case stops being a single-incident crime and starts becoming a sustained conspiracy of destruction. 11 air fresheners. Trash bags purchased online. A garden hose run to the Tesla for an extended period, witness after witness testified the Tesla was washed and rewashed. Multiple chainsaws ordered and delivered to the Hollywood Hills residence. 2 chainsaws were found inside the garage. They were tested for blood. The test came back negative, meaning, if they had been the tool used to dismember Celeste's body, blood would have been detectable on them, and it wasn't. The defense argues that means those chainsaws were not the dismemberment tool. But the criminalist also noted, And this is where the prosecution lands another punch, that a Makita brand chainsaw ordered online and delivered to that same house was not found during the search. Missing. Unaccounted for. 2 chainsaws probably not used, plus a third chainsaw probably used, and that third chainsaw is the one the prosecution is going to be looking for from now until the trial. Baby, but wait. Let's back up to day 1 of the hearing, because that is where the defense went on offense. The criminalist was cross-examined by Blair Berk. The defense attorney asked why she had not tested the chainsaws for touch DNA. The criminalist answered that because the presumptive blood test had already come back negative, the chainsaws were considered to lack forensic value for the dismemberment question and were not collected as evidence. The defense pounced. Why didn't they run the more sensitive test? The implied argument is that the LAPD rushed the scene and may have inadvertently damaged the case for the prosecution by not preserving every fiber of potential exculpatory evidence. That is a real defense move. If the case goes to trial, Blair Berk will point at that missing test and say, maybe my client would not be sitting in this courtroom in an orange jumpsuit. Whether the jury buys that or not is for trial. Here is another piece that hit the gallery hard. Investigators also found, in the same garage, jugs of fake blood. Yes, baby. Multiple jugs sitting on a shelf in that garage. The prosecution's theory is that the fake blood was sitting there for a creative music video project. The defense has not yet offered an alternative explanation publicly. You decide which explanation is more credible given everything else found in that garage and that Tesla. Now, baby, let me get into the demeanor of David Anthony Burke because the reporters in the room have not stopped talking about it. 3 days of testimony about dismemberment, about a 14-year-old's body inside the front trunk of his car, about her identification via braces, and what does David do? His notepad stays empty. His face doesn't move. His eyes stay fixed on the overhead monitor like he is watching the weather. Mona Edwards, who has been drawing defendants for decades, told reporters during the lunch break that David looked like he was on another plane. Other observers have used the word sociopathic. If you were sitting in that same chair, baby, and your name was on the line, would you not have at least one visible reaction? The fact that they have not been able to coach that into his face is something I want the public to think about. Now let me explain the legal architecture. This is not a trial. This is a preliminary hearing. The judge is not the jury. The judge is deciding whether there is enough probable cause to send this case to a real jury for a real trial. The standard is much lower. At trial, the prosecution has to clear beyond a reasonable doubt. Right now, they only have to clear the 51% bar. From the volume of what has been laid out across 3 days, baby, the prosecution has cleared way more than half. They have cleared multiple witnesses, the Tesla, 11 air fresheners, the garage, the DNA on the wipes, the medical examiner testimony. If this case didn't move forward to trial after hearing what the prosecution has put on, you'd have to ask yourself whether the system is broken. So let me walk y'all through the cause of death testimony. Dr. Grant Ho took the stand just 4 minutes before lunch break on day 3. The cause of death, homicide. The manner, multiple penetrating injuries. The defense tried hard to muddy this. They asked whether a sharp instrument could be definitively identified. The medical examiner answered that due to the advanced state of decomposition, he could not definitively identify the weapon. The skin had slid off. Tissues had deteriorated. So the cause of death he classifies as the multiple penetrating injuries themselves, not necessarily a sharpened blade. He also could not rule out a gunshot wound with an exit wound somewhere on the body. The prosecution's filing does list that D4vd personally used a deadly and dangerous weapon, a sharp instrument, as a special circumstance. Dr. Ho's testimony created a small, but real, gap in that allegation. Blair Berk will say, even the medical examiner is not sure if it was a knife. Anyhow, let's talk about what Dr. Ho could say definitively. He could say her body weighed 71 pounds. The braces were still on. The injuries were on the abdomen and the lateral left chest. One was associated with liver damage and the other with rib and diaphragm damage. He could not say which one came first or which one killed her. He could say there was insect activity, beginning stages of maggots, around her remains when the case first came to him. He could say the dismemberment cuts appeared clean or smooth in some areas, although post-mortem changes may have shifted those appearances. He could talk in general terms, for soft tissue or organ cuts, possibly a scalpel. For bone, possibly a bone saw. For a rib, possibly hedge cutters. He laid out enough to leave no doubt this was homicide and not accidental. Now, baby, the next thing that happened in court today was the most controversial single line of cross-examination of the entire hearing. Blair Berk asked Dr. Ho if he could rule out that Celeste Rivas Hernandez stabbed herself. Twice. The medical examiner said he could not definitively rule that out based on his findings. Now, do I think a 14-year-old stabbed herself in the abdomen and the lateral left chest and then dismembered her own body and put those remains in trash bags inside a Tesla? Absolutely not. But the defense asked it. That one line is going to give the defense a piece of tape they can play over and over at trial. LA Magazine, Blair Berk coverage. Y'all, I want to talk to the person who has been watching this case for 8 months. You remember before Celeste's body was identified, all the headlines read, "Body found in Tesla registered to rising star singer." That was the public framing. There were fan theories blaming the singer's house staff, an obsessive fan, a stalker. There were people on social media who defended him publicly and accused LAPD of jumping to conclusions. Baby, after 3 days of forensic testimony, those conspiracy theories are melting. Air. What we have here is a chain of evidence: Tesla, air fresheners, blood on the garage floor, blood seeping through rubber mats, trash bags, wipes, DNA with 24 zeros behind the first digit, a missing chainsaw, fake blood, an alleged financial motive, an alleged sexual relationship with a minor, and a flat effect described by courtroom observers. That is one consistent narrative the prosecution can tell from opening statement all the way to closing argument. Now let's talk about Celeste's family. They have been in that gallery every day. Mercedes was reported to have come out of the restroom visibly shaken during lunchtime after the chainsaw testimony. The father has been sitting stone-faced beside her. They are private people. Their civil attorney has been making his own statement about how this family is going through something no parent should ever go through. Their 14-year-old was reported missing, the family spent months not knowing where she was, and now they are in a courtroom looking at forensic photos of her dismembered body wrapped in trash bags inside a car that allegedly belonged to the man prosecutors say was having an illegal sexual relationship with her. Hold them in your heart today. The part that the courtroom sketch artist quoted to Julia Deng is going to stay with me. The artist said David looked like he was on another plane. The artist said he was not reacting. That is the professional opinion of someone whose entire job is to observe human faces inside courtrooms. Now baby, one more issue I want to be precise about. The judge in this case, I am not naming her out of professional courtesy, made a serious ruling on day 3. A reporter violated the live transmission rules. Cameras and phones are not allowed in that courtroom. The reporter was transmitting somehow, and the judge excluded her from today's proceedings on the spot. She also addressed a private investigator named Steve Fisher, who has been sitting in court and who has been running down investigative leads on his own time for the property owner near where the Tesla was allegedly kept. Fisher has been publicly advocating for the prosecution. Fisher was in court briefly on day 3 but was excluded as a witness because the prosecutor argued he had potentially violated grand jury secrecy. If the case goes to trial, expect to hear his name again. The financial argument is the elephant in the room. Special circumstance murder for financial gain. $11.5 million record deal. New album about to come out. The teen discovered, social media inflated fame cycle that D4vd was riding right before the case broke. The prosecution's theory, the alleged sexual relationship with Celeste was something that could have publicly destroyed the singer's commercial appeal. Management allegedly orchestrated to keep the relationship hidden. The teen went missing. The body ended up in the singer's car. The Tesla got towed. The world found out. The album got pushed. The tour got cancelled. D4vd's career went from peak momentum to frozen in a single week. That is the motive. Money. Not artistic. Not romantic. Money. And the financial director who testified earlier, Benjamin Gregor of Mogul Vision, was reportedly combative on the stand. According to NBC LA, he gave answers on cross-examination, not just misaligned but in direct opposition, to what he had previously told the grand jury. The prosecutor pulled transcripts and asked, on the record, is your testimony accurate today or was it accurate then? Either way, baby, the house was being put up for collateral and the money was flowing. Now y'all, this is not a hobby conversation. This is a real California courtroom. This is real forensic evidence. This is a real child's body. The right takeaway is to let the case move forward. To give the process the chance to play out. To not jump to conclusions. To give the family dignity. To give the defendant the dignity of a real trial. To trust that the jury system will do the right thing. So as I close out, here is what I want to leave you with. Over 3 days of testimony, the prosecution has put on enough that the case is almost certainly going to trial. The defense has put on enough that they have planted real doubt in at least 3 places. Both sides tested out their cases. The financial director's shifted story. The criminalist's 24-0 DNA match. The autopsy photos flipping through the projector by accident. The air fresheners. The missing chainsaw. The fake blood. The garage floor. The Tesla with blue star marks. The mother's shaking hands. The father's silent vigil. The defendant's empty notepad. The "yes sir" answers to the bench. The orange jumpsuit. The unshaven face. The grown-out hair. All of it is now on the record. Real quick, before I sign off, NBC LA's Julia Deng and Brian Entin from News Nation. The court reporters and sketch artists stuck in those benches reading their notes, watching the projector, writing paragraphs in real time. They cannot record. They cannot live stream. They are doing journalism the way it used to be done. Anyhow, what do you want next? More medical evidence as it comes out over the next 2 days. A breakdown of Blair Berk's third-degree fallback strategy she has telegraphed in court filings. A walkthrough of what the 2027 trial will realistically look like. Or a longer piece on the cultural moment happening online, including fans who say they cannot reconcile loving the music with the alleged conduct. Tell me in the comments. Because this channel runs on what y'all tell me to run on. Before I let y'all go, there is a young girl whose name is Celeste Rivas Hernandez. She was 14. Her body was found in the front trunk of a Tesla. Her braces were still on. She is the reason this courtroom is full. If Celeste's family is watching, what do we want them to feel? Seen. Not forgotten. The legal system is taking their daughter's case as seriously as it deserves. Thank y'all for spending this time with me today. This is heavy. This is graphic. What we walked through today is real. This is a real family's pain. Until the next update, take care of yourselves, take care of your people, hold your children tight, and I will see you in the next video. Verification and sourcing. Every case detail in the script. Tesla in Hollywood tow yard, September 8, 2025 discovery, 11 air fresheners, blood on garage floor, Blue Star presumptive test, DNA with 24 zeros, phrasing, Dr. Grant Ho's testimony, Blair Berk's tertiary transfer hypothetical, Benjamin Greger of Mogul Vision, Steve Fisher's exclusion, financial director's grand jury inconsistencies, is sourced, not from memory, to corroborating reporting from NBC Los Angeles, ABC 7, Fox LA, LA Magazine, BBC News, KTLA, the Wikipedia overview, and the verified broadcast transcripts of Jesse Weber's sidebar show on Law and Crime, Day 2 and News Nation's Brian Entin coverage. Every claim about the defendant's conduct is presented as allegation, courtroom testimony, or court filing. No verdict has been reached. This is a preliminary hearing, not a trial. Style mechanics, open with subject address plus insider cadence, drop villain's name in escalating contexts, end on rhetorical binary plus comment prompt, replicate a Kikistia's established pattern as documented in the verified transcripts of her Jay-Z/Nicki Minaj Roots picnic video, KQPX9ZLDP0, and her earlier Nicki/Megan Thee Stallion commentary, _UVQR is WC.